Thank you. Thank you, candidates. This segment is a focus on funding and enrollment. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. While all questions in the segment are related, I want to make sure you know that specific questions will be asked of each of you candidates. Okay? We're going to begin with Frank Lada, and I'll read the question, Frank, and then I will begin the timer. And that will happen for each candidate. All right? So this is a focus on shifting enrollment-based funding. Here's the question. California is one of 6 states that still fund schools based on average daily attendance, ADA, which penalizes districts for absences even when they must staff for every enrolled student. Will you commit to working with the state legislature to transition to an enrollment-based funding model? And what specific legislative steps will you take to ensure this change is fiscally sustainable under Proposition 98? Your time will begin now.
Thank you for the question. And yes, I would support and organize also to make sure that we move towards that enrollment-based model. I think when it comes to funding, treating funding where we're at, which is maybe less than 3% of the gross state product compared to like Vermont, who's at 6%, as was mentioned in this talk, we're always at the lower 30 statewide in terms of the numbers of state per pupil funding, even though that has changed thanks largely to the pressures of unions, of striking educators, of parents fighting back. That has from 2019, when we were below 20,000 per student, and now thanks to all the actions, thanks to all the advocacy, we're at $28,000 per student, and yet we're still in the bottom half. So in order to really talk about fiscal stability and the actual future of transforming education, we need to radically fund education, and the money is there. I think Prop 98, a perfect example that's going on right now, is that the governor, despite having the floor be Prop 98, the amount of dollars, he was actually withholding $5.6 billion that should have gone to the schools automatically. So this is the type of politics that are going on with our public schools that should be unacceptable, is that schools are being asked for accountability, yet are not being given the supports. And in the long term, what we need to talk about with increasing the funding is that we actually need to lower classroom sizes. Many of these numbers were implemented in the 1970s and part of Ed Code, where we need to really, if we want to transform education, have 18 students in the lower grades, 25 students in the middle and upper grades. And with that, we're actually being short-sighted about potentially closing schools, potentially pulling back on district property, because we would actually need more classrooms. We'd actually need more staff. And that's what will bring about true educational transformation in the state, which is something we deserve.
Thank you. So followed by Gus, legislative advocacy strategy. Here's a question. As an independent elected official, how will you use your office to sponsor and champion legislation that replaces the current ADA seat count with a more stable membership count? And how will you persuade the governor and the legislature to prioritize this multi-billion-dollar shift in the state budget? Your time will start now.
Thank you for that question. So first of all, just to touch really quickly on ADA versus enrollment, I want to remind everyone that one of the biggest drivers of the financial difficulties we face in the public school system is that enrollment in California is dropping. So if enrollment is dropping, I don't think it's such a great idea to lash the system to the mast of a sinking ship. So instead, the way that we can fix that, I've proposed already that the way we should do it is as the education budget grows, because it naturally grows as the overall state budget grows. As it grows, we should repurpose all the future growth in that budget for the next several years. Anything past the rate of inflation, we're going to repurpose to hiring more teachers and lowering the class sizes. Because if we want to do anything about the kind of unequal outcomes that we're seeing in our school system, which by the way, you've heard about San Diego. If you're a Black student in San Diego, according to what's in ed data, only about 1 in 3 of those students meet reading standards, and only 1 in 5 meet math standards. If that's the number one performance among urban districts, that tells us something alarming about how education is actually working out in our urban districts. The way to actually solve a problem like that is to lower class sizes so that the students are getting more time with an instructor. Now, how would I do that? That's obviously a legislative fix. I'm happy to work in partnership with our state legislatures, with the governor, to get that kind of proposal passed. And I think there's a real incentive for them to do it because it's 6 million kids. This is a state that talks a big game about equity, and yet we see the results that we're seeing in our districts year in and year out. So I think there's an opportunity here to say, instead of doing equity in rhetoric, let's do equity in results. And the simple way to do that is get our class sizes down. That's a good starting first point. And then we can look at other opportunities to elevate our public schools. But if we repurpose that money to lowering class sizes, which is something the legislature can do today, they have a supermajority, they have the ability to do it. I will work with them to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Josh. This is a focus on attracting and retaining students. And here's a question. With nearly 300,000 students having left California public schools recently, how will you work with lawmakers to create incentives for families to return, such as expanding dual enrollment opportunities with community colleges or improving school safety and specialized programming? Your time will start now.
Okay, so it is a good question. So people vote with their feet, and families. I'm always impressed at how much sort of trouble they'll go through to find the right opportunity for their kids. As a member of the state senate, I did a couple of bills I think are squarely in this area. One was the expansion and extension of the District of Choice program, which is a program that lets a district declare itself a district of choice and makes it much easier for parents, families from neighboring districts to place their kids in those districts. Proud of the work that I did. All the evidence shows that not only are kids better served by programs that fit their needs, but it creates competitive pressure among neighboring districts to raise the level of their offerings. On dual enrollment, equally proud. I did a bill in 2024, SB 1244, that solved a really thorny problem where community colleges were not being responsive or respectful to districts. And so what SB 1244 does is it allows for school districts to have additional options to create partnerships that suit their CTE and other college level instruction needs. That is so important, especially for first generation college students or for students for whom college has not been a family tradition. To be able to be in that environment and to take college level instruction is a transformative experience. And so what we should do at the state level is identify best practices and ensure that districts are aware of them and provided the resources to then replicate those practices so they can raise the level of their offerings as well. And if we can do that, then I think that takes a lot of the energy out of the charter versus publics argument. But more importantly, it creates a standard of improvement and rigor that every family will benefit from. Of improvement and rigor that every family will benefit from.
Thank you. This is the next question is for Nichelle. This is a focus on universal programs. Current priorities include expanding transitional kindergarten, formerly known as TK, and universal school meals. Here's the question. How will you ensure the quality and sustainability of the universal TK rollout, especially regarding facilities and specialized teacher staffing? Your time will start now.
Thank you for that question. I'm working in a teacher preparation program right now because transitional kindergarten teachers are able to be credentialed, where in preschool teachers are not. TK is a transition, so we're still dealing with small children that we are placing on a regular big kid campus. So TK teachers should still be well versed in child development. They should understand how little people learn and their needs in terms of learning through play and exploration, same as they would in preschool. So that expectation of that understanding should not change. As superintendent, my work would be around continuing funding around universal preschool also because of that 0 through 3 dynamic around child development, but ensuring that that transition between preschool and kindergarten gets children ready for the regular school day that is kindergarten, by making sure that they are prepared to become literate, prepared to be mathematical geniuses and study all of the academic curricula that they'll be learning. And we need specialized teachers that understand child development, but are also understand the content areas that they will need to be teaching so that students can learn. And the superintendent should be overseeing what that looks like in terms of their preparation, in terms of professional development, and understanding what students' learning looks like in these programs.
Thank you. This is a question for Richard, a focus on equitable resource allocation. Here's a question. Low-income students are statistically more likely to miss school, leading to less funding for the very districts that need it most. How will your legislative agenda ensure that a shift to enrollment-based funding specifically targets resources to the high-need districts rather than just creating a windfall for more affluent areas? Your time will start now.
No, thank you for that question, Vanessa. And I think that's really more than anything hitting the major point of why it's wrong for California to be one of the really 5 states in the country that persists with enrollment-based funding. So the legislative analyst report that just came out shows that the ADA-based funding system that California has actually costs school districts about $6 billion a year. And disproportionately, that costs the highest poverty districts the most. And it's premised on the idea that somehow the ADA-based system creates an incentive for districts to improve attendance, but that's never been true. And none of the other states that have an ADA-based system have shown that that actually improves attendance. Meanwhile, we have districts like Compton Unified with 90+% socioeconomically disadvantaged that took its chronic absenteeism rate down from 17% to now below 7%. So where we can begin with the shift to enrollment-based funding is districts like Compton. We can look at districts that receive concentration funds, and any district that right now is back at the state's pre-pandemic average of 12.5% chronic absenteeism should immediately be transitioned into enrollment-based funding so that those districts can continue to invest in the strategies that actually make a student wake up in the morning and want to be at school. The after-school programs, the arts and music, the career pathways at the high school level. Those are the kinds of programs that actually improve attendance. And rather than have a punitive system that was developed in the late 90s, let's shift to an incentive-based system that actually rewards districts that are improving attendance, like Compton Unified.
Thank you for that. The next candidate is Al. The category is small school protection. And here's the question. Small schools often serve the most vulnerable or rural populations, but are the first one on the chopping block during budget cuts. How will you adjust the state's funding formula to provide a stability cushion for schools with low enrollment and to ensure they remain viable? Your time will start now.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not sure if it's accurate that they're the first to be cut because, as we've been talking about, we have an attendance-based funding system, and so it's proportional to the number of students that they have. I think the challenge with the small school districts is that a lot of times they don't have that capacity. A lot of if the bus driver is sick, then the superintendent has to jump in and drive the bus. And I've visited those small school districts, especially in the North State area of California, other rural parts of the state of California. Um, and so, we need to make sure that we provide basic funding for all school districts. As the lead author of Proposition 2, for example, I made sure that we created a set aside in funding for small school districts so that even if they don't have the local property tax base to support local school bond measures, that we made sure that we set up financial hardship provisions to set aside funding for small school districts. And that's what, I want to make sure that we do that not only for the school facilities programs, but also for the overall general fund operations.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Okay, and here's the next candidate, Anthony. This is a focus on opportunity gaps. Persistent opportunity gaps remain for Black and Native American students. What specific data-driven intervention will you champion to close these gaps that have exacerbated recent learning loss? Your time
Well,
will start now.
I think what we've seen that definitely works is the community school model, and the community school model and all the ancillary services beyond the curricular benefits provided by good schools. The ancillary benefits are really what benefit a lot of our communities that are challenged with socioeconomic problems. We saw particularly during COVID that there were certain service delivery models, particularly those that utilized a lot of the services of nearby nonprofits and government entities that could help alleviate a lot of those problems, a lot of the socioeconomic problems, and some of the mental health problems. For me, that was the big sort of discovery of COVID that we then developed, morphed into our community schools project. We need to expand those. From the perspective of cost, I think we see that in the long run, we end up gaining more because a lack of services provided elsewhere by other nonprofits and other government entities.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer.